Lady Sci-Fi stood at the tall balcony of her crystal palace, gazing down at the city below. The towers glimmered in pale blue light, and vehicles of every shape and size moved like rivers through the streets. Her eyes, bright and golden, saw everything, and yet nothing seemed real anymore. She was wealthy, powerful, and respected, yet she felt empty. Her people bowed to her, but their words were hollow. Her advisors spoke of numbers and profit, not of life or kindness. She had all the luxuries a noble could want, but she had never seen true compassion. It was as if her entire world had forgotten what it meant to care for another being. She turned away from the balcony, her reflection in the glass catching her solemn expression. The richness of her silk gown could not hide the heaviness in her heart. For days, she thought about the poor districts. The lower levels where the streets were narrow and the air smelled of smoke and metal. She had never visited there herself. Her kind believed that to go there was beneath them, yet a small voice inside her asked, what if the richness of power cannot replace the warmth of a kind gesture? What if kindness is the true treasure of the universe? She could not ignore the question any longer. The world she ruled had everything but had lost the one thing she longed to understand. It's the meaning of genuine humanor, any being kindness. She made her decision. She would leave the palace, disguise herself, and experience life among the ordinary, unseen beings of her planet. It was risky. No noble had ever walked the streets unnoticed. If anyone discovered her identity, she could be mocked, kidnapped, or worse, her reputation destroyed. But the yearning to see kindness, to understand it, was stronger than fear. She entered her private chambers and opened a large trunk. Filled with garments of every color and fabric, she pulled out a rough, dark cloak and pulled it over her shoulders. The glow of her skin, which was naturally luminous, was hidden beneath layers of shadowed cloth. She tied her golden hair into a messy knot and smeared a small amount of dirt on her face to break. The smooth perfection of her features, when she looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. The noble lady, once the center of attention, now looked fragile and almost invisible. She took a deep breath and whispered to herself, "Tonight I will learn." The streets of the lower districts were dark and twisted, even though the city lights above tried to penetrate the gloom. Narrow alleys were crowded with stalls, rusted vehicles, and the scattered belongings of those who had little. Alien merchants shouted over each other, trying to sell food, clothing, or metal trinkets. Stray drones hummed through the air, scanning the crowd for stolen goods or unauthorized visitors. Lady Sci-Fi moved carefully, trying to appear weak and hungry, but her steps faltered more than once. The air smelled harsh and sharp. The noise of machinery and shouting filled her ears, and the hum of the city's power grids was a constant vibration beneath her feet. For 3 days, she wandered the streets, sitting by fires and asking for scraps. No one helped her. She was pushed aside, laughed at, and ignored. A group of alien youths threw rotten fruit at her, giggling as she struggled to protect herself. She realized how invisible one could become without wealth or rank. The cruelty of indifference was everywhere. She slept in doorways, cold and hungry, but each night she refused to let herself despair completely. She kept asking. Somewhere, someone must be kind. Somewhere, there must be hope. On the 4th day, her strength began to wane. Hunger made her stomach twist painfully. Her knees shook from exhaustion. She sat on the edge of a busy street, hands shaking as she tried to gather the few scraps of food she had found. The sky above was dark, the stars hidden by the city towers, and for a moment, she wondered if the universe itself had forgotten her. Then, she heard the soft hum of a ship landing nearby. She turned her head, weak but curious, and saw a small human supply vessel touching down near the street. It was unlike the fast, metallic alien transport she was used to. It moved slowly, carefully, and the light it cast was warm, not cold and clinical. From the ship emerged a human man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and his face carried a calm strength. His uniform was simple, worn with use, and his hands bore the calluses of work, not ceremony. Lady Sci-Fi watched him approach her, expecting the same reaction she had received from every alien on these streets. She expected sneers or suspicion. Instead, he knelt down beside her and held out a small container of water. His eyes, deep brown, met hers with a look of concern, not judgment. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft but firm. "You look hurt. Here, drink this." She blinked, stunned. No one had ever approached her like this. She had seen countless faces turn away in fear, anger, or indifference. Yet here was someone offering help without expectation. She wanted to ask why, to find the hidden motive, but there was none. He simply saw her suffering and responded. She took the water in trembling hands and drank. The cool liquid soothed her parched throat and revived a small spark of hope inside her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She was unused to being in a position where words of gratitude were necessary. Humans, she thought, must see the value of small acts in a way her kind could not. He smiled gently. "Don't thank me yet. Come with me. You shouldn't be out here alone." He extended a hand. She hesitated. Pride, even in disguise, made her want to refuse, but the ache in her stomach and the chill in her bones outweighed her pride. She took his hand, and for the first time in days, felt a sense of safety. He led her through the twisting streets to the human supply outpost. It was small, but welcoming. Inside, the humans greeted her without questions, offering blankets, food, and places to rest. She realized how different they were from her own people. Her kind measured worth by power and wealth, yet these humans measured it by need and action. They offered care because it was right, not because it would benefit them. She marveled at the simplicity and depth of their kindness. Lady Sarai listened as the humans spoke of their own worlds. They told stories of storms on Earth, floods in distant lands, fires that had destroyed entire towns, and how humans had come together to rebuild. They spoke not with pride, but with honesty. Their words painted a picture of a species that valued compassion as much as survival. She felt a stirring inside her, a mixture of awe and sadness. Her planet had the richest technology, the most advanced medicine, and the highest towers, yet none of it could replace the warmth she now witnessed. As the hours passed, she felt her energy returning. She shared her own experiences cautiously, careful not to reveal her identity. She spoke of the streets, the indifference of the alien crowds, and her own attempts to find even a single act of kindness. The humans listened, never judging, only offering understanding. One of them, a young medic, handed her a cup of warm tea. "Everyone deserves care," he said simply. She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She had never heard such words spoken with sincerity. Suddenly, a scanning drone hovered near the outpost, its sensors searching for unauthorized activity. Lady Sarai froze. If it detected her, she would be exposed. But the humans acted calmly. The Captain Ryan waved his hand, and the drone moved on. She watched him, realizing that he protected her not because she was important, but because it was the right thing to do. No power, no rank, just principle. The clarity of that moment struck her like lightning. She had never understood the depth of such integrity. Her own people would have debated endlessly about reward or consequence. These humans acted immediately because it was right. As night fell, the outpost glowed with warmth. Lady Sarai sat on a blanket, wrapped in layers the humans had offered. She looked around at their simple, functional quarters, at the faces of people who had little but shared everything. And she felt an unfamiliar sensation: hope. For the first time, she understood that kindness was a force more powerful than gold, more enduring than status, and more valuable than any treasure in her palace. She had disguised herself to see truth, and the truth had revealed itself in a human smile, a warm hand, and the gentle voice of a stranger who asked only if she was safe. She drifted to sleep that night, feeling the weight of exhaustion but also a spark of wonder. The streets of her city were still dark, the towers still cold, but somewhere out there, she had found a living example of what her world had forgotten. It was a small flame, fragile and easily snuffed, yet it glowed brighter than the crystals of her palace ever could. In her dreams, she saw the faces of humans helping each other, sharing what little they had, and she felt a longing to bring that light back to her people. And so, Lady Sarai, wealthy alien noble of great renown, discovered something no wealth or power could provide: the simple, enduring force of genuine kindness. She had come to the streets to observe, to test, and to learn. And in the process, she had found a human who showed her the heart of compassion in its purest form. It was a lesson that would linger long after the first rays of dawn lit the towers. A lesson she would carry into her life, and perhaps one day teach to her people. Lady Sarai woke to the soft hum of the outpost. The human crew moved quietly, tending to small tasks, checking equipment, and preparing breakfast. The smell of warm food filled the air, and for the first time in days, she felt a sense of normalcy. She stretched her arms, the blanket around her shoulders still heavy with the chill of the streets, and watched them. There was no ceremony, no expectation of reward, only action and care. She marveled at the way they worked together, each person aware of the other, helping without question. It was foreign to her. Her kind measured worth by titles and rank, but here, value came from effort and compassion. Captain Ryan Hale noticed her observing and smiled. "You rested well?"
Asked.
His voice was calm, steady, and comforting. Lady Sarai nodded, unsure of how to respond. She had never been asked such a simple question with genuine concern. The humans around her, despite her strange appearance and unknown origin, treated her as one of their own. She felt an unfamiliar warmth rise in her chest. Perhaps she thought this was the difference between her world and theirs. Here, people helped because it was right, not because it elevated their status. Over breakfast, Ryan served her a portion of protein-rich paste and warm liquid. She ate cautiously, unused to human food, but it nourished her in ways the scraps from the streets never had. As she ate, he explained their mission. The humans traveled the galaxy to deliver aid, repair colonies, and observe alien civilizations. They often faced indifference or hostility, but they persevered. Their motivation was simple: help those who needed it. No ulterior motives, no power games, no political gain, just action. Lady Sarai listened closely, her golden eyes wide. She realized that her planet's leaders would never understand this. They measured every action by profit or influence. Here, humanity measured it by need and courage. After breakfast, Ryan led her through the outpost. It was small, but efficient. Every tool in its place, every corner clean. Humans worked quietly, without argument, communicating in gestures and words that were clear and effective. Lady Sarai followed, noticing small acts of kindness that made her heart ache with longing. A young medic offered a blanket to a tired crew member without being asked. Another human repaired a broken panel, then cleaned the surrounding area, ensuring no one else would trip. Each act was small, but together they created an environment of care and respect. It was something she had never seen in her palace or among her advisors. There, everything was polished, precise, and cold. Here, imperfections were met with patience and assistance. Later, Ryan and the crew invited her to share stories of her home world. She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. Her disguise remained intact, but the human's openness encouraged her. She spoke of the streets, the indifference she had faced, and her experiments in disguise. They listened without interruption, offering empathy instead of judgment. One engineer, a wiry human with sharp eyes, asked, "Did anyone help you?" She shook her head, feeling the sting of past neglect. Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, a simple gesture of solidarity. "Sometimes, the right person comes along at the right time," he said. She felt a shiver of gratitude. This human's words carried more truth than any speech she had heard in the council chambers. As the day wore on, Lady Sarai began to see the humans in action outside the outpost. They distributed food to alien laborers, repaired shelters, and cleaned contaminated water sources. She observed quietly, taking mental notes. The humans did not discriminate. They helped all who needed it, regardless of species, wealth, or appearance. She had seen the wealthy and powerful of her own people dismiss the needy with a glance or a scoff. Here, life was valued above status. She felt both admiration and a growing desire to bring this understanding back to her world. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the horizon, Lady Sarai sat beside Ryan on a small ridge overlooking the city. The lights of the lower districts glimmered like a river of stars below. She spoke softly. "Your people. You see value differently than we do. Here, it is in kindness, not power." He nodded. "Humanity has survived because we care for each other. Sometimes it is dangerous. Sometimes it costs us. But it is always worth it." She stared at him, understanding dawning. Her kind had everything: technology, wealth, influence, but had lost the ability to act with pure intent. Humans had little, yet their actions carried immense weight over the next several days. Lady Sarai participated in their work. She carried supplies, repaired equipment, and distributed aid. Each small action, each act of helping, filled a void inside her. She discovered strength not in command, but in service. She learned to observe the needs of others, to anticipate problems, and to respond without expectation of reward. The humans guided her patiently, correcting mistakes gently and encouraging initiative. She felt a sense of purpose she had never known. The city streets that had once seemed oppressive now revealed stories of resilience, struggle, and quiet courage. She was beginning to see the world as humans did, through the lens of compassion and understanding. One afternoon, a group of alien children approached the outpost. They were wary at first, their eyes wide with curiosity and suspicion. Lady Sarai knelt to their level, offering small gifts of food and water. She spoke softly, smiling in a way that encouraged trust. The children's faces lit up, and for the first time, she realized the transformative power of even simple kindness. Ryan watched from a distance, approving but silent. She felt pride, but not the pride of status. It was a deeper satisfaction, born of making a genuine difference in another being's life. During this time, Lady Sarai's disguise remained intact. She noticed occasional glances from humans that betrayed their curiosity, yet they never questioned her. They acted on instinct, responding to need, not appearance. She felt gratitude for their trust, yet she also wondered how long it could last. Her identity, if discovered, could change everything. But even as she pondered this, she realized that the humans' actions were consistent, regardless of who she was. They treated her with care because it was right, not because of her rank. It was a lesson her kind had forgotten. She felt a quiet determination to remember it and to carry it forward. As days turned into a week, Lady Sarai grew stronger, more confident, and more attuned to the needs of those around her. She learned to move unnoticed in the streets, to offer help without expecting thanks, to recognize moments where small interventions could prevent greater suffering. She realized that humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons, nor in technology, nor in wealth. It was in the ability to act with courage, integrity, and compassion. Humans risked their lives, gave their time, and shared their resources, not for power, but because it was the right thing to do. The clarity of this realization struck her deeply. One night Ryan approached her with a small package. "We have some supplies for the neighborhoods," he said. She nodded, understanding immediately. Together, they distributed blankets, clean water, and food. Aliens who had ignored her in the past now looked with curiosity and hope. She felt a connection to the people she had only observed before. The simple acts of giving, receiving, and protecting had created a bridge between worlds. She understood that compassion could ripple through a society, touching lives in ways that power alone never could. During these moments, Lady Sarai also observed the human interactions among themselves. There was laughter, occasional disagreement, but always resolution and support. They celebrated small victories, comforted failures, and shared burdens without hesitation. She compared this to the rigid hierarchies of her palace, where disagreement often led to contempt, and success was measured in titles and influence rather than genuine achievement. The contrast was stark, and she felt a growing responsibility. She could not simply enjoy these lessons for herself. If her people could learn even a fraction of what she had witnessed, the world might be better. One evening as the crew rested, Lady Sarai wandered to the edge of the outpost alone. The city below was quiet now. The harsh lights dimmed, and the air carried a soft breeze. She thought about the days she had spent in disguise, rejection, the mockery, and the cold indifference she had experienced. Then she remembered the human who had first approached her, offering water and warmth without question. That simple gesture had changed everything. It had ignited a spark inside her, showing her that hope and kindness could exist even in the harshest environments. She knew that this understanding would shape her actions forever. The next day, she accompanied Ryan to a nearby district that had been hit by a recent accident. Structures had collapsed, and the residents were struggling to salvage what they could. She moved with purpose, helping carry debris, handing out supplies, and offering words of encouragement. The humans around her responded naturally, never questioning her presence, always focused on the task at hand. She felt a deep satisfaction. She realized that true leadership was not about command or fear, but about presence, guidance, and support. Actions mattered more than titles, more than appearances, more than wealth. Lady Sarai awoke before dawn. The soft silver light of the twin moons filtered through the outpost windows, casting long shadows across the room. For the first time in her life, she felt a sense of purpose stronger than fear, stronger than duty, stronger than power. The humans around her were still asleep, exhausted from the day's work distributing aid, repairing shelters, and helping the needy. She watched them quietly, feeling awe and gratitude. Their patience, their courage, their unspoken dedication was unlike anything she had ever seen among her own people. She realized she had learned more from them in days than she had in decades of royal training. She dressed quietly, keeping her simple cloak intact. Soon, Ryan stirred and noticed her moving about. "Up early," he said with a small smile. She nodded. "I need to go back," she said, "to my people." Ryan studied her face, seeing determination but also apprehension. "It won't be easy," he warned. She met his gaze steadily. "I have to try. They need to understand what I've seen, what I've learned." He nodded, silent approval in his eyes. "Then go with strength," he said. "Remember what you've learned here." Lady Sarai stepped out into the cool night. The streets of the lower districts were quiet, empty but for a few stray figures. She paused for a moment, looking back at the human outpost. It had been a refuge, a classroom, and a mirror, reflecting the goodness she had forgotten her own kind could possess. She had learned the value of small acts, the courage to act without reward, and the power of genuine compassion. She carried these lessons like a light in her heart, ready to illuminate the dark halls of her palace. Her journey back to the palace was quiet but tense. The city above was awakening, towers casting long blue shadows, and hover vehicles moving with precise purpose. She felt the weight of her identity pressing against her. She was a noble, a ruler, yet she had spent days as invisible, hungry, and disregarded. The experience had changed her profoundly. She understood now what her people had forgotten, that power without kindness was empty, and wealth without compassion was meaningless. She clenched her hands, feeling both fear and determination. When she entered her palace, she would confront a society that valued nothing but status. She would bring a spark of the human lesson back to them. When she arrived at the grand gates, the guards recognized her immediately, bowing and expecting the usual noble demeanor. But Lady Sarai did not bow. She walked with calm resolve, her cloak no longer hiding her presence, yet her manner quiet and commanding in a different way. Whispers spread among the servants and advisors. Something had changed. Her eyes held a new fire, not anger or command, but understanding. She entered the main hall, where her council awaited. They were shocked. Their words were sharp, their questions pointed. "Where have you been? What has delayed your return?" they demanded. She met them calmly. "I have seen the truth," she said. "Something you have forgotten." The council laughed, thinking it a trick, a challenge, a joke. But Lady Sarai's gaze did not waver. She recounted her journey, how she had disguised herself, wandered the lower districts, suffered rejection and hunger, and finally met humans who showed her what true kindness meant. The council murmured, dismissive at first, but as she described the humans' actions, their patience, and their courage, the room grew quiet. She told them of the humans' dedication, how they helped without thought of reward, how every life mattered to them, and how even the smallest gesture could change the course of events. She spoke not to boast, not to shame, but to illuminate. Some nobles sneered, unwilling to accept her account. Others shifted uneasily, hearing something they had long ignored. She continued describing the humans' teamwork, their care for each other, and their dedication to doing what was right, even when difficult. She explained how she had participated in their work, how she had felt the satisfaction of helping others, and how it had changed her understanding of leadership. The hall was silent now. The echoes of her words filled the high ceilings, leaving no space for disbelief. Then she took a deep breath and addressed the council directly. We have wealth beyond measure, power unmatched, knowledge of the stars, yet we have forgotten what makes us strong. We have forgotten compassion, courage, and the value of each life. The humans taught me something simple. True strength is shown in kindness, and true wealth is shared, not hoarded. We must learn to act for others, not only for ourselves. Her voice was steady, her words carrying the weight of experience, not authority alone. The council shifted, murmuring, some in shock, some in fear, some in curiosity. She had struck a chord no speech of titles ever could. Lady Sarai called her personal guards and asked them to open the gates to the palace courtyard. It was a radical act. They hesitated, but seeing her resolve, they obeyed. Outside, humans from the outpost she had visited had arrived, carrying supplies, blankets, and medicine. The citizens of the lower districts watched, astonished, a noble allowing outsiders. Inhumans, who had once seemed insignificant to her people, now entered the heart of the city bearing gifts. Lady Sarai stood at the balcony and addressed both her council and her people. Kindness is not weakness. Wealth is not value. Power is not strength. It is our actions for one another that define us. These humans have shown what it means to help without expectation, to care without judgment. We must learn from them. The humans, guided by Ryan, worked alongside the palace staff to distribute food and supplies to the lower districts. Lady Sarai walked among them, sometimes disguised, sometimes fully visible, showing her people how small acts could create significant change. She helped lift crates, handed blankets to children, and offered words of encouragement. Her actions were not ceremonial. They were genuine, deliberate, and transformative. The people began to notice, some hesitantly, some with growing hope. They had seen nobles command and dictate, but this was different. This was leadership through action, through care, and it resonated deeply. As days passed, the palace began to change. The council could not ignore the visible difference in the citizens' faces. They began to participate, some grudgingly, some genuinely, in efforts to help the lower districts. They rebuilt damaged structures, organized aid, and supported initiatives that improved lives. Lady Sarai guided them patiently, remembering the lessons she had learned from the humans. She reminded them often, do not act for reward, do not act for praise. Act because it is right. Meanwhile, the citizens of the lower districts marveled at the transformation. For the first time, they saw nobles not as distant rulers, but as active participants in their welfare. They began to trust the palace again, offering suggestions, sharing knowledge, and participating in rebuilding efforts. A sense of unity began to grow, bridging the gap between classes. Lady Sarai walked among them daily, listening, observing, and encouraging. She understood that leadership was no longer about decrees and proclamations, but about presence, empathy, and consistent action. She had seen this in humans, and now she was applying it to her people. One afternoon, Ryan visited the palace. He was greeted warmly by the citizens who had heard of his role in teaching Lady Sarai the lessons of kindness. He spoke to her privately. You've done more than I imagined. Your people are responding to what you've learned. It's remarkable. Lady Sarai smiled softly. I could not have done it without what you showed me. I will carry this lesson always. It is not enough to learn. We must apply it. He nodded. Humans believe in doing what is right, not easy. You've taken that lesson further than most. She felt pride, not of title, but of purpose. As weeks turned into months, the palace and city transformed. The lower districts flourished. Citizens no longer feared neglect or indifference. Nobles and commoners worked together, guided by Lady Sarai's vision and inspired by the example of human kindness. She implemented programs to teach care and compassion to every level of her society. She shared the stories of the humans she had met, their bravery, generosity, and selflessness. The citizens listened, inspired by tangible proof that kindness was powerful and that it could change lives. One evening, as the twin moons rose again, Lady Sarai walked to the balcony of her palace. She looked out over the city, glowing softly under the moonlight. She felt a deep peace. The lessons she had learned in disguise, walking unseen among the streets, had transformed her understanding of leadership, power, and strength. She remembered the human who had first offered her water, the one simple act that had changed the course of her life. She knew that the galaxy would remember not the wealth of her empire, but the moment when one alien noblewoman embraced compassion and applied it boldly to her people. Ryan stood beside her, silent and observant. He smiled faintly, understanding the unspoken gratitude. "Your people will continue to learn," he said. Lady Sarai nodded. "I will guide them. They will see that true strength is measured not by what we possess, but by how we treat one another. You have shown me that, and I will ensure it spreads." He nodded, impressed. "Then the galaxy is better for it," he said. Together, they watched the city, a living testament to the power of kindness.